Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to their episode of Canucks Conversation, brought to you by Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. My name is Avery Drelly. I am joined, as always, by Harmon Dial. It is Canucks Conversation. It's a Friday edition of Canucks Conversation. It is episode 739 of Canucks Conversation. Two games to talk about today because it's a Friday show, and the Canucks have a back-to-back starting with tonight against the Carolina Hurricanes, followed tomorrow by a game with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Right off the bat, I want to get to this. Listener shout out. Ariel C, who helped us with the quads bingo card at a couple weeks ago, it feels like, created a spreadsheet to track all of the bets because we talked about it on yesterday's show. We said at the end of the show when we do our bet of the day, I'd like to know what my record is. Ariel went back to all of the shows dating back to October 9th of this season and created a spreadsheet where we track every result of my bets. So you can see at the start there that it was a lot of Canucks money line and the Canucks lost all of those games. Not only that, Ariel then went on and added notes for each one. So fraudulent Leafs loss, Wagon Flames loss, Wagon Flames win, categorized them and created a tally in the top left as well. It was amazing. It's amazing. And we see my record there, 25-26 on the year. And I have 17 underdog wins where I bet on the underdog and won. Fraudulent Leafs wins, I've picked them 3 times. Fraudulent Leaf losses, I've picked them 3 times as well. And then the Wagon Flames, I've picked right twice. I've picked them incorrectly 5 times.
Yeah, I think you better stop betting on your Wagon Flames. Otherwise, they're going to miss the playoffs anyway, but you're just going to accelerate the process and make it even quicker for me to take that victory lap if you keep betting on them.
Cashing in on the Pirate Pack in February. We'll see.
You're losing money and you're going to lose the bet. Like at a certain point, you may as well bet against them so that you can pay off that Pirate Pack.
The Pirate Pack bet, yes. Oh, there's some thought process right there, Harm. There's a good thought process. But yes, huge shout out to Ariel. Like seriously, that's so impressive. That's so nice to have that made for us. That's just so nice. We love our listeners and our viewers here on Canucks Conversation. Speaking of which, if you're in the YouTube live chat, today is a great day to hit us with a super chat. Our super chat charity partner this season is the BC Mental Health Foundation. You want to make sure your question or comment gets on the show? Hit us with a super chat. Proceeds from our super chat will go to the BC Mental Health Foundation, changing the face of mental health and addiction by supporting breakthroughs in care, public understanding, research, and knowledge exchange. That's so cool having that tracker. It's going to be great. And I say this every day, but we've got a lot to get to. I want to get to this Brad Marchand stuff. I already see people in the chat talking about it. We're going to get to it. The rumors out of Boston that were quickly shot down by Marchand and Pasternak. I want to talk about that, obviously how it relates to what the Canucks have dealt with and what they're still dealing with to some extent. But news of the day, Harm. Let's get to it. Canucks, Carolina, tonight. Elias Pettersson activated from IR. This came down about 30 minutes before the show started. Looks like he's going to be good to go, and he is going to play for the first time since December 23rd against the San Jose Sharks, which I'll remind you, he scored 2 goals in that game. He looked really good. That was kind of the game that came after a streak of 6 games that he had without a point, where you're like, okay, maybe he's going to turn it around. Obviously, then he goes down with an injury, misses the next 6 games, but Elias Pettersson is in the lineup tonight.
It's huge. He's the only center on this team that can help the Canucks control play in non-Hughes minutes. We know that JT Miller has had a lot of success when he is on the ice at the same time as Quinn Hughes, but when you look at the splits for Miller's shifts without Hughes, there's a colossal drop-off where the Canucks just don't generate anything with the Miller line on the ice. Whereas with Pettersson, there's definitely a drop off, but it's not as profound. It's not as abysmal as it is for not just Miller, but the whole team, frankly. So it'll help them control play a little bit better, which is a nice shot in the arm because they're coming off a game against a really good Capitals team where they finally started to, in the second half of that game, start stacking shifts, spending more time in the offensive zone, winning battles along the wall, and getting back to a lot of the staples that made them successful last year. So if they can carry forward that type of play, plus you inject Pettersson in this lineup, that's going to be massive against a Carolina Hurricanes team that for years has been one of the best teams in the NHL at controlling even strength play.
And Harm, let's not forget, JT Miller has turned his game around. I think we can say that.
100%.
He's playing hurt, but man, you take the 4-point night that he had and even last game as well. Like JT's feeling it right now. And if they can get those contributions, like that's how you stack shifts, as you just said. So Elias Pettersson, I mean, I noted this. I wrote the news over at Canucks Army. Like at the very least, he's going to bring them really solid defensive play. That's going to be a step up. I know the price tag and everything, you're looking for points, and maybe he'll produce those points, but there's no doubt, even if he doesn't produce the points tonight, he is a step up on what they have at center right now. So Elias Pettersson back in the lineup tonight, a big boost for the Canucks against a Carolina team, Harm. That is pretty interesting heading tonight. The Carolina Hurricanes got off to a really hot start this year, and they haven't fallen off by any means. They're still going to make the playoffs, obviously, but like quietly, the Canes have started to, I don't want to say plateau, but like it is fair to say that they have kind of started, or they had some streaks there where they were going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, before we shift gears to Carolina, one thing that I wanted to add regarding the Pettersson thing is it's not just what he's individually going to do. It's the trickle-down effect of now your other centermen behind Pettersson are slotted in the appropriate slots as opposed to being out of their depth. I mean, I look at Pius Suter, for example, who's had a good season overall, but he's gone quiet in this stretch that he's had to play second-line center, not only when Pettersson was out, but during Miller's leave of absence as well. Suter's only got 3 assists in his last 15 games. Hasn't scored in that time frame either. So it's been, I think, too much to ask of him to effectively win his matchups as a second line center. I know in the very early stages he was performing pretty well, but the longer that workload catches up in tougher matchups where usually a guy like Suter's accustomed to going up against third and fourth lines, primarily, whereas now he's having the matchup against legit top 6 centers. I think the opportunity to bump him down the lineup is going to be huge, but also for Teddy Bluger. This is something that surprised me to see, where over the last 20 games, Bluger, who I think we all know over his career has been really, like, he's best slotted as a fourth line center. Now he can in a pinch play 3C and do it all right. He's good defensively, and last year, sure, the third line had success with him centering it, but that's because Garland and Joshua were on another level. But you look at the last 20 games, Bluger's only controlled 38% of 5-on-5 scoring chances, which is the worst mark among all Canucks forwards. They're not generating any offense, and it's also one of the worst marks among all NHL forwards in that time slot. And since the holiday break specifically, they've been outscored 5-1 at 5-on-5 with Bluger on the ice. And again, I'm not trying to criticize Bluger for his performance. I'm just pointing out that that's sometimes what happens when a player that is ideally a fourth line center is having to play third line center without Connor Garland, and instead having guys like Danton Heinen and Kiefer Sherwood who are decent players, but not really the high-end impact players that a guy like Bluger would need if he's going to play 3C.
A lot of shots going at Danton Heinen recently, it feels like. I don't want to talk about that in anyone else, but I think you're bang on about that trickle-down effect, Harm. And look, like Pettersson individually, he's probably going to help. Like you said, the non-Hughes minutes. He's one of the only centers that can keep this team afloat in the non-Hughes minutes. So he's going to help, but you're bang on. You'd rather have Pius Suter somewhere else than your second line center. So I like that.
Would you also, and think about constructing lines with Pettersson back, would you bump Garland down to the third line and go something like DeBrusk, Pettersson, Sherwood? Or do you want to load up that second line with DeBrusk, Pettersson, Garland?
So we're in the camp of Lekermacki, Miller, Besser, Sticks.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we think that's a foregone conclusion? Because I might suggest something otherwise.
Ooh, okay. What are you thinking?
I was thinking either Garland or DeBrusk goes up to that line, because now you have some more stability. But
no, here's what I would do, because I think Garland, like, the third line has been a black hole for this team. Over the last 20 games, they've scored less than 2 goals per hour at 5-on-5, whereas last year we know how dominant the third line was. I think it makes the Canucks a lot deeper when Garland can drive his own line, especially because Miller is leading that first line and playing at an effective level, to where you don't necessarily need Garland further, like, pushing play up the lineup, because some of your like Miller's starting to control play. So what I would consider doing is keeping Lekkerimäki, Miller, and Besser together.
Mhm.
And then I would go DeBrusk, Pettersson, Sherwood. And then I'd go something like Heinen, Suter, Garland. And then you're leaning on Garland to really to really drive play. And then that allows you to bump Bluger down to the fourth line.
I like that. And I think it would be a slam dunk for me if Dakota Joshua were healthy. Like, if Dakota Joshua were healthy, it's
I know.
Dakota Joshua, Connor Garland, third line. Forget it. It has to be. Has to be. It's the only reason it's a conversation for me is that Joshua isn't healthy, but I think I do agree with you. And on the Miller line, the thing that really sticks out is that Miller's playing really well. He's controlling play and all that sort of stuff with Lekkerimäki on his wing. And I'm not saying that in the sense of, oh, well, Lekkerimäki sucks and look how much better Miller's making him look. Like, Lekkerimäki's playing a role on that line and he's playing it well. Like, he's going to be a trigger man for that line, and I like the idea of keeping him there. So I'm with you actually on keeping that line together. I think you have to kind of hope the spark stays there. That second line is, I think, where the questions come because Joshua's not healthy, but it'll be interesting to see how they go tonight. I don't know if you can really go wrong when you're configuring that line tonight. I will say, like, the shine did wear off big time for me with the DeBrusk, Pettersson, Sherwood trio, so I would be tempted to go Garland there instead of Sherwood, but we'll see. We'll see tonight, and you also have to consider the opponent that they're facing, right? Like, Carolina's going to hit you with more than two lines, so you got to win those matchups, and we'll see how the Canucks fare at doing that. Do you have anything else that you wanted to get to before we kind of start talking more about the Canes themselves as an opponent?
Yeah, well, just on that sort of topic, like you mentioned, the shine was sort of wearing off on DeBrusk, Pettersson, and Sherwood. I fully agree with you. The issue I just see is most teams are in a position where they have to lean on a complimentary guy who probably shouldn't be in the top six to play in that role just so you can enhance the depth of your lineup. Like, even looking at Carolina, for example, they've used Eric Robinson on the second line all year long. And he's been good. He's sort of been similar to Kiefer Sherwood, where it's like he scores around half a point per game. Most of that production's at even strength. But let's be honest, how many people looked at Eric Robinson and went, that guy should be a full-time top six winger on a team that many perceive as a contender? And look, that's not ideal, but that's kind of what you have to do if you want to preserve your top nine depth. And that's where the Canes right now, for example, they have Andrei Svechnikov on the third line. That's a trade-off where it's like, okay, you're banking on your two drivers, Pettersson and DeBrusk, to do the heavy lifting, and then it's just the third guy complimentary, whether it's Sherwood in that spot or you want to give Höglander another run, whatever it is. Like, the onus falls on the two like surefire top six guys to carry and drive that line.
So many different pieces on this Carolina team, and we're going to talk about them. But before we transition to Carolina here, Harm, I want to quickly ask you, the thing that's being asked most in the chat right now is, okay, well, who comes out? There was no media at morning skate today, so we didn't really have information on Pettersson until the team announced that he was activated from IR. Didn't have information on Demko, although we would assume that he's starting in net tonight. We don't know for sure, but we would assume as much. Who comes out of this lineup? I see PDG in the chat. I see Sasson in the chat. I'm going to say it's not Sasson. I see Niels Höglander in the chat. I could see Höglander. I could see PDG. I think it would be a mistake to take Sasson out of this lineup.
I lean towards one of Sasson or PDG. I'd probably lean PDG.
You don't think Höglander would come out?
He's a possibility, but I don't mind him on the fourth line. And I think, like, yeah, I didn't like the penalty against Montreal, but he has shown some sparks, and I'm more confident given the Canucks. Like, I straight up think Höglander is a better player than Max Sasson, even though Sasson's looked good through what we've seen from him at the NHL level so far. And I don't even know why I'm comparing him to Sasson. I'd keep him in the lineup and I'd take PDG out.
Yeah,
like, I think PDG is to me clearly the number one option.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the thing when you compare Sasson and Höglander, I think the bigger thing is like, okay, who's the better fourth liner? And I think the team would probably look at that and say it's Max Sasson right now. But like, let's also not forget Höglander was starting to find some spunk again. And then he has the late penalty and we're right back where we started. So we'll see. We'll see what happens tonight. You hope Höglander stays in the lineup. I think it's going to be PDG that comes out. personally, but we don't know for sure. So we will see in just a few hours' time. 4:00 start tonight with the Carolina Hurricanes and the Vancouver Canucks. Okay, Harm, we talked about the Hurricanes forward depth. As a whole, what can we expect to see from the Hurricanes tonight? Dustin Tokarski starts in goal, it looks like, so you're going to have not a world beater in net, but what can we expect from this Carolina team?
Yeah, they're just a really deep team, top to bottom, right? They aren't the type of squad that has that electric game breaker, even though Marty Necas is having a phenomenal year. But where they thrive is just they have no weaknesses. And when you look at their skater group, all four lines, all three defense pairs, and I think it's been interesting to see how well they've adapted given how many pieces they lost in the offseason, right? They lost Gensel, they lost their entire second pair with Shea and Pesce, and yet they haven't really skipped a beat. When you look at the season overall, yeah, they've been scuffling a little bit lately, but their overall record has been really strong. And when I look at their blue line, part of it is because the Orlov-Chatfield pair, which was essentially their third pair last year, has really successfully stepped up to handle the minutes that Shea and Pesce used to. And meanwhile, they also signed Sean Walker to kind of stabilize and drive play on the third pair, which is a really nice luxury to have. They're quick, they're tenacious, they close pressure really well. When I look at the last time these two teams met, it was noticeable how stifling the Canes were defensively, especially defending the blue line and defending entries, and not just defending the types of entries where the Canucks are trying to skate into the offensive zone with possession, but even dump-ins, just they were gloving pucks out of midair. They were swatting pucks with their sticks out of midair. Even on dump-ins, it was tough to get it deep and get the forecheck established. The Canucks were turning a lot of pucks over at the offensive blue line, and what would happen is the Hurricanes, who this year they've tried to add a more dynamic rush offense element to their game, is they'd immediately be off to the races, and they were just generating odd man chances and rushes at will. That's a game where, if you remember, Kevin Lankinen had to stand on his head. It was one of the Canucks' worst defensive efforts all season. So that is going to be really important tonight is puck management. It always is, but especially against this Canes team, because they've got a lot of speed and they're trained now with the evolution of their system to just fly as soon as there's a change of possession.
This is from Brad. Harm, is Carolina really a good team? They've been 500 over the past 6 to 7 weeks. This is what I was talking about, where they're starting to slip up a little bit. I'm not here to say that they've turned it around, but they've certainly done better than they were like a week ago.
Yeah, and the main thing is every team has kind of lulls and stretches like that, unless you're one of those, unless you're like Vegas where you're on track to win the President's Trophy. The point is they're still on pace for 101, 102 points. They have the third best points percentage in the Eastern Conference, and this is before they've made any deadline acquisitions. So yeah, you can look at almost any good team's like season and isolate like a stretch of a couple months where the record doesn't look very good. I mean, look at the Oilers last year, right? They ended up making it to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, had a good regular season as a whole, but look at their record in the first 2 months of the season, right? So unless you have a dream-like campaign where you're going to score 110 points, you're going to have multi-week stretches where your record doesn't look great, but it's counteracted by stretches like they had at the start of the season where they went 14-4.
Few things as well that I wanted to get to in anyone else when we talk about, when we talk about records. I like to talk about teams around the league. There's some stuff I want to get to. Oilers are one of them. Yep, there's a few things. On Carolina, though, last night, did you catch any of the game?
No, I didn't.
Okay, well, I'm not sure if Jacob's updated yet, but I said, oh, you know what? This is going to be a Leafs win. You know, you've got Carolina. Carolina now is playing on the second half of back-to-back because they played last night. But I was like, the Leafs are in town. Like, the Leafs are on a 5-game win streak. They've been playing some really, really strong hockey. They're the heavy underdog tonight. I'm going to take this. This might be a great bet to make. Leafs get off to a great start. I think it was 3-1 at one point. I can't remember. I was watching the game, believe it or not, but I was also trying to make beef stroganoff for the first time. I know not a super hard dish to make, but I'm not very good in the kitchen. Hold on, I need to check what the score got to, because I remember watching it and thinking to myself, like, oh, cool. Okay, so it was 2-0. It was 2-0 in the first period, and I was thinking to myself like, okay, cool, we're in the driver's seat. What a great pick by me. Hurricanes tie it up. Then Jordan Staal scores. Then Austin Matthews scores 3-3, and then they just keep scoring. The Hurricanes keep scoring, and I think if I saw it right, I think I retweeted this. Our friends over at Leafs Nation tweeted this out. Yeah, Austin Matthews finished the night with a -6, which is the highest or the lowest plus minus rating of any Leaf like ever or something like that. And Mitch Marner also a -6 on the night.
That's wild too, because the Leafs have been one of the stingiest defensive teams in the NHL all year.
And they've got the goaltending. They've gotten the goaltending.
Yeah, because they brought in guys like Tanev to stabilize and upgrade their blue line, and all year they've gotten really good goaltending. So for the Canes to have an offensive explosion like that, good for them.
Here it is. I tweeted it out. Matthews, Marner, they finished with the worst plus minus by any Leafs player since 1991-92. That is just great. It's so good. But yes, anyways, I didn't get a chance to talk much about the Leafs, and we're going to talk about the Leafs later in this show. But Jacob had this in our chat. I wanted to point this out about Dustin Tokarski, who is a journeyman in every sense of the word. Tokarski's played for 18 different NHL/AHL teams since 2010. Harmon, that is a lot of pads, and it makes a lot of sense why Tokarski has a pretty boring setup for the past few years. He's just had a white helmet, and he's got white pads.
Well, I can't even imagine, like, forget the all moving from team to team, but imagine the lifestyle of how many different cities you're constantly moving back and forth from. And not just from one season to another, but mid-season when call-ups happen or you get sent down. And when that transition period happens, players have to stay in a single hotel room until they know that they're going to be with the team for a while. The team sends a letter to the player basically saying you're free to get a place, and that's when they can get settled. So, man, that is... Look, he gets paid a lot of money to play a game. I'm sure nobody has sympathy for him in that position, but just from a lifestyle perspective, I can't imagine how hectic 18 different teams since 2010 would be like.
Teammates, that's a lot of names, it's a lot of faces, that's a lot of people that you're meeting in that span since 2010. That's so funny. Like, think about that. That's like changing workplaces every second day, every week. Yeah. Anyways, so Dustin Tokarski starts in goal tonight for the Hurricanes. Harm, before we move on to the Leafs, anything you wanted to get in about the Hurricanes?
Not a lot. I mean, this is an opportunity for the Canucks to capitalize, because the Canes are playing on the second leg of a back-to-back, because they do have Tokarski in net. They're getting Elias Pettersson back, which is huge. This is the type of game that in the midst of a difficult stretch of their schedule, it's one of their easier games. And I think they really need to take advantage, especially because coming off the Washington game, even though they lost, like, process-wise, there were a lot of positives to take away from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Canucks get Elias Pettersson back tonight. Okay, let's talk about Toronto. Toronto is the game on Saturday. And I also wanted to mention, we're going to be doing another crossover episode. So obviously I did one with Tyler Yaremchuk about a month ago, I think, where we put out a crossover episode on both the Oilers Nation Every Day and Canucks Conversation podcast feeds. It's going to be a quick little 30-minute conversation. I'm going to do one tomorrow with Leafs Morning Takes Nick Alberga. Nick's a great guy, obviously, even though he talks about the Leafs for a living. Nick's a great guy. We're going to talk to him, and we're going to do a little crossover episode. So, folks, if you're listening to this on Friday, you're going to have a crossover episode available to you in the Canucks Conversation podcast feed and on the Canucks Army YouTube channel on Saturday morning. We're recording it at 9 a.m. Saturday morning, so hopefully it's out by around 10:30. We will see how that goes, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to talk to Nick about the Leafs, but before that, I also want to talk about the Leafs with you, because you know how much I love talking about the Leafs, Harm. They play the Leafs on Saturday, and look, I just said the 6-3 loss to Carolina. If there's one thing this Leafs team actually has done pretty well, and of course they're fraudulent, don't get me wrong, I love to talk about the Leafs, but if there's one thing that they have done pretty well this season, it's not compound losses. Like, they don't lose back-to-back games very often, this team.
Yeah, and they have transformed their identity a little bit now. They are a little bit shorthanded on the blue line right now because Jake McCabe is out. But when he and Tanev were together, I mean, the defensive numbers that those guys put together playing shutdown minutes were immaculate. And it sort of freed up Morgan Riley to not have to take on those hard matchups against the opposition's best players. Tanev's been brilliant for them. Now, of course, he's signed for the next like 10 years till he's like 45 years old. But to have him at that cap hit has been a terrific addition for them. And honestly, it's impressive to see how well they have played and what their record is, given that Austin Matthews has missed a decent chunk of games this season. And even when he has played, because he's been battling through injury, he hasn't come anywhere close to being as dominant as he was last year.
Just 5 times, and I know I said the back-to-back thing, so I want to actually have the numbers. Just 5 times the Leafs have lost back-to-back games this season, and only their longest losing streak is 3 games. They've never gone over 3 games. That's impressive to me. They don't lose back-to-back games very often, especially when I bet on them, like I did last night.
By the way, how funny is it that in a contract year, Mitch Marner, whose previous career high is 99 points, decides this is the year that I'm going to put the Leafs on my back, and he's on pace for 112 points. He's done a lot of it without Matthews playing to his usual ability. He's probably been the Leafs' best player this year in a contract year. Perfect timing for him to get that massive bag.
And I hope that Brad Treliving does not sign him to an extension until after the playoffs. Do it in the playoffs. If you don't do it in the playoffs again, that's it. That's got to be it. You have to cut your losses and walk away. You cannot approach this and say, well, look how great he's playing. Of course we'll sign him to an 8-year deal. You have to see how this translates into the playoffs, because history would tell us that it's not going to translate into the playoffs. And I hope for the Leafs' sake they don't make a mistake and do that now.
You hope for the Leafs' sake that they don't make a mistake. Wow. Very, very soft words. But no, I'm growing. I would love to be a fly on the wall of negotiations where, like, just to hear the Marner Camp's initial ask. Like, I feel like that would be so hilarious if he finishes with like well over 100 points and it's his career year. Like, he's like their camp, especially the initial ask when like in any negotiation, typically it's like both sides start on the extremes and then they sort of meet in the middle. I would love to hear just like that first demand and the thought process behind it. Man, I feel like that would be really entertaining theater.
Do you also mean with regards to how much it might have changed now?
Like, what do you mean?
Like how much that ask was compared to what they're probably going to be asking for now.
Oh,
after
yeah.
112 points. We'll see. We also should have mentioned Jordan Staal hat-trick last night as well against those fraudulent Maple Leafs. The Leafs blue line, like you said, bit shorthanded. We're going to do a big preview on them tomorrow, so I don't think we need to spend too much time talking about them, especially if we don't have the context of what happens tonight with the Canucks and Hurricanes. But my big takeaway is that the Leafs don't lose a lot of games in back-to-back, and they also, are pretty good in the regular season. Always have been. But that being said, the Canucks have the Leafs number, typically.
It's also the second leg of a back-to-back for Vancouver, though. So clearly the game tonight is going to be a lot more winnable in my mind than the one against Toronto. Not saying it's an automatic L. The one against Toronto, but it's going to be a lot harder than playing a tired Canes team when the Canucks themselves are a little bit more fresh and rested.
Yep, going to be a good game tonight, you hope. Okay, anything you want to say about the Leafs before we get to anyone else?
Not really.
Let's do it. Let's get to anyone else, which is brought to you by Greta. Come down to Greta Bar YVR for a thrilling evening presented by Fountain Tire as we watch Vancouver take on Edmonton. Oh, excuse me. There's going to be exciting giveaways, including hockey tickets, signed memorabilia, and jerseys to be won. Doors open at 5 p.m. and puck drop is at 6 p.m. Each ticket grants you access to all the action, and it's all in support of One Broken Biker. Our VIP 4-person reservation includes entry into the event, a Greta burger and beverage, plus a game card. Don't miss out. Secure your spot now at nationgear.ca for an action-packed night with the Canucks Army crew. Going to be a lot of fun, folks. Nationgear.ca, go to the events tab, go to Canucks Army tab, whatever you want to do. Find it. Buy your ticket. Going to be a good time. and I already checked, RELC, who helped us creating the bet tracker, is not local, so we can't get a ticket out to REL, but we would have liked to. So come out, spend some time with us. Going to be a lot of fun.
Link is in the description, both on YouTube and the audio podcast. So if you are interested, it is right in there directly to nationgear.ca.
So is the next Family Feud survey, right?
Correct. Next Family Feud survey is available as well. Another interesting one. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see how the data goes. I think this one could be back-to-back wins for you guys if it goes the way I think it will.
Looking to go 8-8 on the year. Okay. It's anyone else? It's brought to you by Greta. Harm, I had a few things that I wanted to get to. The first of which, we were getting questions about this, and I wanted to get to it right away. Brad Marchand. Not sure if you saw this. There was reports, I think either radio or podcast person out in Boston. Not a regular member of the media is kind of what my understanding of it was. Like, isn't there daily asking questions? But puts out a report about a rift in the Bruins locker room between David Pastrnak and Brad Marchand. The guys don't want to play together. This is a bad situation between the two. And that was hard to believe, obviously, immediately as it came out, but it did not take Brad Marchand long to come out and really, really strongly shoot down the rumors. Let's take a listen.
There was a radio report this morning that I know you're aware of that,
Yeah.
that Pasta doesn't want to play in a line with you. I'm just trying to get your reaction.
Well, yeah, I have heard, what was said in the media this morning. It's unfortunate. I know reporters have a job to do, and that job is to report on the team, and usually you try to be fact-based. But when there's just blatant lies told in the media, that's where there's a problem. And the fact that this guy has a platform and he's just making stuff up is embarrassing. And there's zero truth to anything that he said on the radio. This is how you lose your job very quickly. The fact that he's going to have a job after this is insane, because Pass and I are best friends. We've had an incredibly close relation for a long time. The only reason we don't play together is so that we can spread depth throughout the lineup. There's zero truth to him being a problem in the room. He's one of the most loved guys in the room. There's zero issues in the room at all. And the fact that they say that he's in the center of anything is a completely fabricated lie. So this guy has zero merit to anything he's saying. It's very frustrating, because this is what happens. Obviously, we have not pulled our weight this year. We have not had the season that we've wanted to have. But I'm not going to let some random guy come in the media and just spit absolute nonsense. And so, I mean, from this point forward, this guy has zero credibility. The fact that he's coming out with this is ridiculous. It's embarrassing. It just, anything that he puts forward in the future is now not going to be deemed as truth, because he's completely just making all of this up. And it's unfortunate. If he would have done some kind of fact, he'd probably just made this up. If not, if he would have fact checked, he would have found out that it's all nonsense. But yeah, there's zero truth to this. It's ridiculous that now that we even have to address it. I wasn't going to address it. I wasn't going to talk about it, but I'm not going to let it become something that it's not. So this guy can go pound sand, go back to the closet where no one knew where he was before. And report on nothing, because that's what he's going to be doing after this.
Brad, just
Okay, so some comments.
savage at the end. Go pound sand.
So some comments from the Bruins captain. And I saw people pivoting this and saying, see, Canucks? This is how you handle that. Not even close. Not even close to the same situation. Like, this came out, like, what was it, yesterday or today?
Yeah.
This got addressed right away. This wasn't whispered about for 3 or 4 years behind the scenes with real sourcing and people not coming out and saying what they had heard, and all these stories that we've all heard over the past few years. Those were whispers that were then, I don't want to use the word confirmed, but it's a lot easier to shut stuff like that down when your head coach and your captain don't come out and say the things that Quinn Hughes and Rick Tocchet said. And that's not a criticism of them, by this point, we all understand the situation. We've heard the reports that people in the Canucks organization are frustrated, that this rift can't be worked out or whatever. And we hate revisiting this, and we're not going to go down the road of talking about it more, but just completely different situations. So if you're out there criticizing the Canucks and saying, oh, like, see, it's so easy to handle these situations. Look what the Bruins and their PR staff did. You don't get it. You just don't get it. The simple fact of the matter is, Harman, I don't want to come out and say I don't know the guy in Boston. I don't like coming out and saying, oh, this is completely made up. What I will say is, like, it does sound like this is probably just a poorly sourced story, which happens sometimes. You get a nugget, and the golden rule, shout out to Rick Dhaliwal. Rick Dhaliwal taught me this one. The golden rule is get it from two sources who don't know each other or don't have the same interests. Get something from two sources who don't have the exact same interests, and then that's when you know you're probably down the line of truth. But if you're going to report something like that, you better be sure about it. And that's why, like, ultimately, and people in the chat saying, like, oh, well, JT and PD denied it. I know PD had his little moment, but you'll recall when JT talked about this, he said, like, this isn't a thing, you know, in a sense, the media has made this a lot bigger. Absolutely. I get that from his perspective. And I said as much as soon as it was said. We haven't even talked about it since then. And I don't think we're, I don't think we're doing anything wrong by talking about it now. I think we've kind of become the podcast that doesn't talk about it, which is nice. But it's just, I just wanted to get that out there, that this is just such a different situation. Although they might look the same on the surface because, oh, two players riff, blah, blah, blah. Totally different situation. If you're out there criticizing the Canucks and saying, well, they could have just done this. Not true. And there was someone in the chat. Where'd it go? Nick Poshek. I learned how to pronounce the name in the chat. He said literally all Miller and PD had to do to avoid months of endless drama was pretend to be friends for 5 minutes for the cameras, and they couldn't do it. Do you not think that anybody in the Canucks organization have probably brought that up to them and just said, like, hey, if you want all this to go away, of course, yeah, start playing better. But two, like, the Willie Mitchell, Ryan Kessler, there's something in this organization that is an example of making something like this go away. And I know this is years old, so it's a little bit different. Sure, a practice skirmish is different than a year-old story. I get that. But seriously, like, you could have done things differently, sure. But this idea that, oh, the Canucks could have just done this to make this all go away, that's just not true. It's just not true.
As honestly, as soon as I saw the Bruins radio clip go viral, I was like, oh no, this is trouble. Because first of all, like you said, I don't think this is a person that's actually in the room on a day-to-day basis. Second of all, it's like I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of this reporter or radio host, this person beforehand, so it's not like a very credible source. And the way that it was, like how blunt the wording too was.
There's gray. Not everything's black and white.
I immediately knew this is gonna get dunked on tomorrow so badly, and it is not gonna end well. No. Like I'm so glad you put it. I'll be honest. Like I didn't even like that came up in my timeline, and immediately I was like, that's not true. Like I guarantee the way that this person like reported it is just like it's not the way that he described. Not saying it's completely made up. But immediately I was like, I don't buy this, and he's probably going to get dunked on endlessly.
Yeah. And I do think, like, people did rightfully point out that, like, Marchand said I wasn't going to talk about it, but you know what happens when you don't talk about it right away and you don't get in front of it? You start to get some situations like the one we've seen out here. So maybe it played a bit of a role for sure. But this idea that, like the Canucks should have just told Miller and PD to go out there and defiantly deny the rumor. A lot easier to do when your head coach and captain don't take accountability for the thing, which is what they did. So I don't want to talk about this anymore, but I just wanted to get that in because people were asking about it. And I just see all these people on Twitter just like, oh, see Canucks? It's so easy. Just do this. Yeah. Different situations.
Anything else in the chat?
I'm trying to look. I had another thing that I wanted to bring up. Jacob, you scour the chat. Do you have anything for us, Jacob?
No. Just dealing with a couple other things back
I got one.
I'll keep an eye out.
I got it. Rasmus Andersson. Do you see this, Harm? Crushes my hopes and dreams. I almost quote tweeted this and said, Rasmus, please don't say that. You don't know what you mean. You don't know how many people you're hurting when you come out and say something like this, because today Sportsnet Eric Francis out in Calgary caught up with the Calgary Flames defenseman, Rasmus Andersson. Sorry, I'm tearing up a little. This is difficult for me. We've been talking about Rasmus Andersson since the start of this season. The answer for this Canucks team. He was the number one thing on my Christmas letter to Santa. Dear Rasmus. The direct quote. I hate the Oilers, I hate the Canucks, and that's just the way I am. Of course I would love to stay here, but I've heard from everyone else who has been in my situation that it's a business, so we'll see what happens. Made it pretty clear that he wants to remain a Flame, and throws in the I hate the Oilers and I hate the Canucks. It doesn't hurt my feelings, but
It shouldn't.
but that being said, it doesn't not hurt my feelings either that he doesn't want to come out and talk to me.
Maybe if you write him a letter, he'll change his mind.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, is maybe he hasn't received my letters. I don't quite understand where the disconnect is here, but Rasmus Andersson, in all seriousness, he's still a few months away from being able to sign an extension, but like an interview like that, with the direction the Flames are going, it's kind of making me think that just maybe, Harm, the Flames might just extend this guy on July 1st, which is something you've been warning me about since about September. I refuse to believe it, but now I'm starting to believe that might end up being what happens.
Yeah, I've only brought it up like 10 million times, but no. Here's the thing too: is you don't want to read too much into. It's common for guys to say, "Oh, I want to stay here," but when it comes down to negotiating dollars and cents, term, then it's a different tone, right? Like, for example, I had a great conversation with Luke Shen ahead of the trade deadline, where he really wanted to stay in Vancouver, but doesn't mean that him and the team were able to work out an extension, and he ultimately was traded and didn't come back to Vancouver, right? So I wouldn't go too far in the other direction and assume that just because Andersson wants to stay, that like Nikita Zadorov wanted to stay here, and it didn't happen, right?
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Slim possibility, but it is still a long shot, right? Like, there's a reason that his name hasn't been on any national insiders trade board as far as I've seen.
Except for mine, in my head.
Keyword national. Not Fantasyland.
In all seriousness, though, like, I if I'm predicting, which I am now, like, this guy is signing an extension with the Flames. What's he going to ask for that the Flames look and go, oh, we can't do that? Like, look, think about where the Flames are in their competitive cycle, Harm. Like, a lot of their players that are coming up, yeah, they're going to have Hunter Brustevich, who's doing pretty well with the Wranglers right now. But, like, a lot of the Flames pieces are going to give them a window where, like, signing Rasmus Andersson long-term makes sense. Like,
it depends, though, right? Because if he...
They've got so much cap space.
Well, right now...
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing, though. Let's say you look at Zane Parik.
Yep.
Right shot defenseman who you're believing is going to be your franchise offensive defenseman on that right side. Plus, you've got Mackenzie Weegar already tied up as a veteran on a really long-term contract. At some point, you have to weigh the cost of that next contract versus what could he get on the trade market. Now, I still tend to lean towards thinking that Calgary's probably going to keep him as opposed to trading him. But it is a calculation that the Flames are going to have to make internally.
So you're telling me there's a chance. Who knew that this conversation would go with me saying, oh yeah, he's probably going to extend in Calgary, and you saying, not so fast.
Well, I'm just saying it's not a foregone conclusion is
Fair
my
enough.
point.
Fair enough. I'm predicting it. I'm predicting it here, and I'll take a victory lap when it happens. You know I will. Irfan Gafar in our chat, I hear he knows some stuff once in a while. He said there's a 0% chance Rasmus comes to Vancouver. Less than 0.
Okay,
So,
well, there you go.
I don't know if I can trust her. No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking. But you know how I am when people say things that I don't want to hear, right? Like, you know, I struggle with that. Does he have trade protection? Ah, yes, he does.
Oh, I hadn't noticed that he has trade protection.
You didn't either? I didn't know that. 6-team no trade list. I'm guessing the Oilers and Canucks might be on that no trade list. Anyways, Rasmus Andersson hates the Canucks. We could title that the title of today's show because my hopes and dreams are dying with quotes like that coming out. But anyways, anything else you wanted to get in, Harm? Let's see if the chat has anything.
I don't have anything in particular.
Okay, I'll read you this one from Ty's Hockey Talk. He said, Is the Canucks having a better record after giving up the first goal simply a fluke? Or does it show something about the shift in play style when they're chasing a lead versus when they have the lead?
I think it's mostly just a small sample fluke than it is any sign of signal. Yeah.
You don't think it has anything to do with the fact that when they're trailing, the team that they're trailing against is in defense mode, and when the Canucks are protecting a lead, they're in defense mode and they do a pretty poor job of it?
Yeah, but that's typical. Like, that's just score effects, right?
Sure.
In general. And out of curiosity, let me see if I can figure out how to pull this up really quickly.
Take your time. I'm literally just scrolling through Canucks Army and trying to find,
because you can look at the Canucks underlying numbers only specifically when they're trailing.
You can.
So maybe there's some. Yeah, you can
Where?
set that filter.
Where?
In natural stat trick.
You've shown me a lot about natural stat trick.
Well, the default setting is all scores, but you can shift it to like leading or trailing or whatever it is. So,
I didn't know that.
Maybe listeners onto something. Let's figure this out in real time.
Okay, I like it. I like this.
Not really. The Canucks, when trailing, rank 28th in terms of their offensive shots on goal rate, and are 27th at generating expected goals offensively. So no, when they're that's just a fluke. When they are
fluke.
trailing, they're like, there's no sign that they generate a whole lot more. Yeah.
Right on. I like that. Wow, we just workshopped that looking under the hood. Remember that segment? Good days.
I remember the Photoshop.
The good old days. It's still the header image on the Canucks
Fisher
Combo
Price.
Twitter account. That's right. Fisher Price checking under the hood. Okay, you get to wrap there, Harm?
Yep.
All right, let's do it. Let's get to our Bet365 bet of the day as we close out and head into the weekend. Let's look at the NHL slate of games tonight. Oh, who are the biggest underdogs tonight? We've got the San Jose Sharks against the Utah Hockey Club. San Jose plus 230, Utah minus 280. We've got Montreal in Washington plus 180 for the Habs, minus 220 against the Caps. Canucks plus 150 against the Carolina Hurricanes. Do I dare take a Canucks money line? I don't think I can. I think I'm banned for the year from doing
Why not?
that.
Why not though? The Canucks have been bad lately, even when you haven't been betting on them. So if you truly believe it's good value, why not?
I like it. And
maybe
people in the chat want it
reverse
too.
the luck.
People in the chat want it too. Let's see if this will reverse the luck. We're taking Canucks money line plus 150 to take down the Carolina Hurricanes tonight. The Hurricanes are the favorite at minus 180. We're taking it. Write it down, Jacob. Canucks money line plus 150. That was our bet of the day, brought to you by Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today, but on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. Must be 19 plus to play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly. Karn, this is like the worst possible time to bet on the Canucks, but sure, why not?
I mean, hey, maybe it'll reverse the vibes.
RE45 said reverse curse invoked. Earth goes hammer Carolina. Get out of here, Earth. Get out of here. Okay.
Okay. Well, no. If they lose, then it's like, all right, like rest the season.
Yep.
For sure.
Now we can be sure.
But hey, maybe you'll snap their losing ways.
Plus 150 is a pretty good value too for all the context of what we said.
Plus, remember, their record must have been incredible last year when you bet on them.
It was
like automatic.
Yeah. I like it.
And we should just mention that Quads has not won a bet in 2025 yet. He's on a 5-game losing streak. So looking to break it here with the van plus 150.
I really should have taken Utah minus 280.
Well, okay, the whole theme is reversing trends, right?
Here we go. It's time. Okay. We'll wrap it up there. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for spending your week with us. Thanks for spending your Friday with us. We will wrap it up there for my co-host Armin Down, technical producer Jacob Lazar, and Irfan Gafar for some reason. My name is Dave Corgelli. Thanks so much for this episode of Canucks Conversation.
Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.